Okay, great. So this is a really exciting moment of a lot of hard work from a number of people over the past year and a half or more, where we have been working alongside of William Peace University since about February or March of 2019, if I'm not mistaken, when we came on campus and we had a number of discovery sessions and kickoff meetings with important internal stakeholders. That information that we gathered from those discovery sessions went in to inform market research, two different kinds of market research, a quantitative online surveys with traditional undergraduate prospects, SPS prospects, parents of prospective students, current students, faculty, staff, alumni, right? A really broad ranging, wide reaching audience there where we collected more than 1,500 responses. We also conducted qualitative in-depth interviews with high school counselors and business and community leaders, some of which now even sit on the board. So really great input there across audiences, which went into forming a brand platform, which we'll talk through here in just a moment. From that brand platform, we brought two creative concepts to you all that brought the brand platform and the strategy to life in two very distinct ways, rather than kind of letting the senior leadership team or marketing and communications kind of just pick whichever concept worked best for us in kind of back rooms. What we did is we went and quantitatively tested those two concepts with those same set of audiences that we did the online brand research with. So traditional undergraduate prospects, SPS prospects, parents, and our internal audiences as well. From nearly 1,200 responses there, we then continued to choose a concept, which you'll see come to life here, and refine it over the months that followed. So based off of all of that, we've put everything together in brand guidelines, which have been shared. And so now we're here at Brand Trainings, right? So to be able to bring the guidelines now even more to life, so that way you all and folks around campus can really start to use the guidelines to really put the brand into practice, which is what we've been waiting to do. So I am going to go ahead and advance us. This table of contents here outlines everything that's in the deck. This should look familiar if you've seen the brand guidelines or if you've gone through them recently. What we're going to do is walk you through them, and then at the end we're going to do some exercises to test either how well you've been paying attention or to the presentation, or just to gauge some interest in how the brand is either on brand or off brand based off of some verbal and some visual things that you'll see. So just really important considerations to think about as we're going in, that our brand exists primarily in the perceptions people have about us, who we are, what we do, and why it matters, right? So a brand is internally facing, and right, it's important to get those internal perceptions, but that's also why we do the external research as well, because those external perceptions really do have an important impact on our brand. So these brands in general are living, breathing things and are increasingly hard to control, which is why brand guidelines and brand trainings are really important. It gets us all on the same page, in the same booklet of guidelines that can really help us say, this is how we should be talking about ourselves. This is how we should be writing about ourselves. This is how we should look on our website, or this is how we should look in advertising. And really just gives us the tools to be able to execute against that. And so these guidelines really are to ensure that all university communications, big or small, are authentic, cohesive reflections of the William Peace University brand. So I'm going to start off with the strategy and thinking about some of the strategic goals that really got us to the point, and that these goals will continue to shift as things continue to change and perceptions shift and priorities become clearer over time. But what we really want to do is tell a concise and consistent story that connects the legacy of the university to its future. build upon the university's mission to prepare students for careers in the organizations of tomorrow, to communicate an active, hands-on, nimble, and responsive educational experience, emphasize our strengths: immersive learning, guaranteed internships, major city location, diverse community, student-faculty relationships, to improve our reputation as an institution that delivers successful career outcomes to graduates, and then also leverage Raleigh's economic, cultural, and professional opportunities to strengthen perceptions of the university's relevancy and value. So, as I mentioned, the findings from our discovery sessions with key internal stakeholders, as well as our quantitative and qualitative market research, helped us develop a brand platform from which the university should really use to guide its marketing and communications strategies and communications. So this should look familiar to most of you, as I think we've engaged with many of you here on this call throughout the process, even if it wasn't in specifically as the University Council in SLT. So just as a reminder, if we start down at the foundation, those are the strong yet non-differentiating aspects of the university, core to who we are, but not lead messages. So history of advancing women, safe, small, beautiful campus located in a vibrant metropolitan city, expert faculty who mentor and truly care about their students, close-knit community that values and celebrates diversity. If you move over to the left-hand side, the personality, this is really about how we think about ourselves and consequently how we want the world to think of us. They really should specifically help us establish and maintain a consistent tone throughout our communications. So we're going to use these words, these personality words should guide us in terms of thinking about how we should be talking about not only ourselves, but the way in which people perceive the way we're talking about things. Our brand pillars really help define our competitive advantage through our three biggest strengths, which is what we do better than other institutions, what we believe, and what connects people. So for the Excel pillar, what we do better, this is really centered around the idea that we combine classroom learning with professional real-world experiences to provide every student with dynamic hands-on opportunities so they're ready for an ever-changing market. Engage, we immerse our students in the professional, cultural, academic, and social opportunities of our Raleigh location, broadening their worldview so that they're prepared to work, live, and thrive in a diverse world. And then finally, endure, we meet students where they are and take them where they need to go, pushing them to be better and do more so they have the skills and confidence to meet any opportunity and face any challenge. And then finally, our brand promise is really our most unique position in the market. It's I should say, not a tagline, rather a simple distilled phrase that forms a foundational point for our strategy, which ladders everything up in the brand platform to creating our tomorrow today. And so I should note that the pillars and what you see here are not words that you would specifically see within an ad or maybe in a view book, right? That these really are guiding us and guiding how we should be talking about ourselves, but not necessarily, like I said, something that the external world would see. So I'm going to dive into the verbal section to really get us going. So in terms of writing about and talking about the brand, the next few pages are really, really important in helping us do that. So our narrative really lays the foundation for writing in a distinct voice. It also inspires the messages that we communicate going forward. It's not marketing language and shouldn't necessarily be referenced directly. Rather, it guides the spirit and future brand messaging. No matter who or what we're writing about, our voice should stay true to the big idea encapsulated here. So it really is important because there will be some times when you see some of these words maybe come off in a headline or something like that, but it's not saying that this is necessarily something you would see as a video script, right? But it really is guiding how we should think about writing about ourselves. So we've all done it, said one day I'm going to do this or someday I'm going to do that. At William Peace University, our students live in the moment. But what does that really mean? It means that the first step in pursuing your passion is to get involved. Take it all in. Get your feet wet and your hands dirty. We believe the most valuable learning experience is one that's tangible, not hypothetical, one that's hands on, nimble, and responsive, not just theoretical. Being here means learning from an entrepreneurial and creative faculty who revel in turning curiosity into confidence and passion into purpose. It means leveraging our location in the heart of downtown Raleigh to gain practical experience in your chosen field. It means you won't have to worry about the transition from college to your career because here at WPU, they're one and the same. We encourage our students not simply to act, but to be, not just to imagine, but to do. We believe in welcoming change and embracing uncertainty. We promote a learning environment that's active, adaptive, and vibrant, where students can build their own community and feel comfortable being who they are right now. Because at William Peace University, your someday starts today. So you can feel in that, in the language, and in the way that in the way that we're communicating, right, that there is a specific tone and feel to what we're trying to get across here, in terms of the ways in which we talk about immersive learning, or the ways in which we talk about our Raleigh location, or our faculty. This slide here is really, really important when it comes to thinking about your writing and talking, whether it's you're giving a speech, or maybe you're writing a brochure for a program, or an event that might be happening. That each story that we tell should have really a clear purpose in an authentic tone that feels distinctively like William Peace University. And so beyond committing those personality words to memory and thinking about these are the words and emotions that we want to evoke when we're writing and talking, we also want to think about these really intentional 10 tips here that are really important to help guide you all move forward. So the first one is sometimes the hardest in higher ed, which is be clear and concise. Um, uh, Higher ed institutions are fundamentally academic. And so a lot of the times we approach things with a very academic mindset and within our own kind of silo within the institution. However, the most effective messages are uncomplicated and clear. So rather than getting hung up on academic language or marketing jargon, we want to write clearly and in a straightforward tone. Yes, this means that we don't necessarily want to use, all of the acronyms that typically plague institutions, right? Because a lot of times our prospective students and our key audiences don't know what those are. So we do really want to take time to spell things out for folks, and not just kind of lean to what feels familiar to us, but really take time to educate our audiences. Knowing your audiences is really, really important. So before you tell somebody that you need a speech written, or that you need a brochure for your program, that you need to have an idea of who's aimed right at that, for that specific tactic, right? That not everything can appeal to everyone, and that you really should have a point of view of who you're actually talking to or writing to. Number three is make it all about you. A lot of the times, everything you write will feel like it's about us, but it's actually about the reader, right? That we want to engage the person that we're talking with. And in marketing, our really effective messages are going to leverage that. Say one thing well. This is also kind of going back to that first thing, of keeping things clear, that every tweet, which you get 240 characters, every pamphlet or brochure or headline, that we really want to go with a distinct message, right? That if somebody reads a tweet or if somebody reads a brochure, that they should have an idea at the highest level what you're trying to communicate. Because when we try to do a lot in one piece, that's when things get confusing for your audience, and we really just want them to hammer home, because our attention spans are so much shorter, and there's a lot of people competing for mind space. So say one thing well. We want to focus on today. There's a lot of things that have happened great in the past, especially at the university, which is a very rich history, which we have heard so much about throughout our engagement. And so, while it's important to reflect back, we really want to think about the university moving forward and its relevance to things today. And your brand strategy really is really about that, right? Creating our tomorrow today. Provide a benefit to make sure that the reader knows what's in it for them. Always give the reader something to do, right? Make sure there's always a clear call to action, whether that's learn more about this program, apply now, contact an admission counselor, right? Whatever it is, give them something to do. Back it up and be human. These two are really connected. Storytelling is one of your best techniques in order to uh, get across your message, right? You can talk about things at a brand level all day long, but it's so great to be able to tell stories, much like, a student that we heard so much about and have just seen so much in previous marketing materials. I think of Deja Gainey, and how her story is so inspiring, and how her story is so grounded in a true outcome. She is a true representation of how William Peace University can really affect students, right? So being able to let prospective students or other audiences see themselves in Deja or another student. And then finally, relatable, right? A lot of the times in higher ed, we feel like institutions of academics, so we need to be stodgy and only talk about things like we're academics and professors, right? But there's a time and a place to be able to leverage some certain things like humor, right? That's not a lot, you don't hear a lot about humor, but we're talking to 16 and 17-year-olds a lot of the time, right? And so they're on TikTok and all of these other platforms, right, that we might not be as familiar with, or how to most authentically engage. But we really just want to connect with people on a human to human basis. And this pandemic has shown more than anything that empathy and understanding is so important to that connection. Our marketing pitch, I won't read through this. This pitch is really designed to serve as an about us that could be on the website, or even for something like a US News description. So I encourage you to take time to read through that. The elevator pitch. This group in particular, if there's one thing you could take home from today, it would be to really, really focus in and spend a lot of time with the elevator pitch over the next, not only couple of days, but over the next few weeks and the next, throughout as you're here and as you continue to grow in your role with William Peace University, is thinking about, this elevator pitch is not supposed to be marketing speak per se, but it really is written in a conversational tone for the most part, and designed for the conversation that we always get, right? Tell me about William Peace University, whether you're at a conference and that right now is probably on Zoom, or whether you're an admission counselor and somebody comes up to your table at a fair and says, well, just tell me about the university. This elevator pitch in particular, both a standard, which is just a little longer if you have a little bit more time, and the conversational one is a little shorter, right? If you're really working on that elevator pitch where you don't have much time at all. So for our standard, we have William Peace University is a nationally ranked institution in Raleigh, North Carolina. We believe learning should be hands-on, adaptive, and nimble, with career preparation built in from start to finish. Our experiential approach meets students where they are and prepares them for careers in the organizations of today and tomorrow. Nestled in the heart of Raleigh's downtown area, our university's culture is as vibrant as the city that surrounds it. Our faculty know not only their students' names, but their interests and aspirations, and are dedicated to helping them achieve them. William Peace students enjoy the tight-knit community of a small university and the opportunity of a growing, flourishing city. The result is a graduate who is not only an expert in their field, but is motivated, capable, and career ready. So this is not to say that you have to memorize this elevator pitch and learn it word for word and be able to spout it out. I don't think Monique and Colleen are going to be doing tests along the way as to who has memorized it most. But I think the goal here is to really think about committing some of these key words and really the flow of this together, because you're going to have your own perspective on it, whether you're coming from student affairs, athletics, public safety, right? There's a number of different ways you are going to be coming from this. And we don't want it to come off as too rehearsed or too canned, but be able to put your own, put a little bit of your personality and your experience with the university in here too. And this is a great way to start high level like this, and then be able to talk about stories to really be able to back this up as you're, going further and deeper into conversations if you have that opportunity. So once again, let me stress that this, for you all in particular, this is where I would spend a lot of my time, starting to think about how can I commit some of these things to memory to really help me in my position in talking to core audiences. The next few pages are about social media descriptors, and you'll start to see some of these start to populate over across the channels, but we do them for Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. So there's a lot of good information that I would suggest you taking a little bit of time with there. So now I'm going to pause. There will be time for questions and answers, any questions and answer session at the end. But before we get to that and before we get to the exercises, I'm going to hand it off to my stellar colleague, Katie Schwindeman, who has been the lead designer for the creative concept throughout the course of the project, who's going to walk us through the visual section.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to walk you guys through this. Stephen probably mentioned this earlier, but the visual and the verbal is really our strategy and all those months of strategy work brought to life. So it should be emotive and should feel like a lot of the things Stephen has been talking about in a visual way. And additionally, the visuals are both supposed to be representative of who William Peace is today, but also tomorrow. There's room to grow into it as we transition. So this first section here is not necessarily new content, but merely a recap of how we use our different logo formats. And Stephen, you can move through this pretty quickly, but we have our primary logo here, as well as some sort of secondary lockups of them. We have the initials that we would only really want to use when the name of the university is being used elsewhere. And we have some sort of almost tertiary logos, such as the School of Professional Studies logo and the university seal. We've also included in the brand guidelines here some instructions around clear space and sizing. These sort of detail things are incredibly important, but can be referred to as you're making a piece. These don't necessarily need to be memorized or thought of in any specific way, but important to refer to as you're making something, to make sure that our visual identity, our logo has room to breathe on all sort of visual pieces. And then that sizing is really important to make sure that people can read it when they're seeing it, whether it's a teeny tiny little favicon on a website browser or maybe a lapel pin. We just want to keep these sizing in mind so it's accessible to all readers. We have two different color versions of these logos as well. We have full color logo, which is that combination of green and gray and black. And then we have our one color logos, which are a black version and a white version. And we've just included here some different situations where you might use one of those colors versus another. And again, the important part here is just making sure things are legible and accessible. And again, more instructions around legibility and accessibility. We don't want to mess with any of the designs of this primary logo or any of the secondary logos. We don't want to stretch it. We don't want to outline it. We don't want to apply any effects to it. Anything that might jeopardize the consistency and the clear communication of using the WPU logo, we don't want to do. If you think you might be using the logo or about to use the logo in a way that might break a rule, please reach out to the Office of Communications to make sure you're using that in a way that is on the rules. So while the previous section for the logo might feel familiar, that's not necessarily new content for you. we're going to be moving into the section of these brand guidelines, this training that should feel new. Our color palette here on this page, we have our primary greens here on the left, and then our neutrals on the right. That green is the WPU green. We haven't changed anything there, but we have added this brighter secondary green that brings a modern feel. It's more contemporary, and we're using both of those in communications, but these are our main primary greens. Coming back to legibility again, we've included a little key there in the bottom right-hand corner of each of those greens for the WCAG color contrast codes. These are really important for any digital applications. And I encourage you to look at these in more detail, especially if you're making any sort of social media applications, obviously anything to do with the website, but we want to make sure we're combining colors, especially in type, in a way that provides enough contrast for all readers to be able to see. So you'll see there on the bottom, we have our bright green, but when we're using that bright green as text in a digital application, it's just a little bit too bright to provide proper contrast. So in the lower left there, we've provided the web version of that bright green and how we might slightly tweak it to make sure in web applications it's accessible to all types of readers and anybody with any color or vision impairments. So going into this next page, if we're thinking back to the brand platform, these colors, I think, really bring these personality words to life. We wanted to make sure we added colors that are vibrant, they're active, they're innovative. And I think especially too, when we've added these sort of blues and peaches and just broaden the color palette as a whole, what we're doing is really making the brand feel creative, warm, and inviting. So here you'll see that green, the bright green and the dark green on the left there, which you saw on the previous page. And then we have a dark blue, light blue, more of like a maroon or a plum, and then like a peach or a salmon. And so we're using those colors kind of in a subtle way. Like we still really want to make sure we're leading with that green. We have the brand recognition with the green, but by adding these secondary colors, especially for our prospective undergrads, we are a bit more inviting and engaging. And yeah, you'll see on this page, we've done sort of just an example breakdown of how we might use color. So on the top, our audiences, our faculty and staff, alumni and community members. The smallest little bars there are those bars for those secondary colors, and that big bar of green, we're still really leading with the green. But for maybe current students and prospective students, we've changed things up. We have a heavier use of the accent colors, but you'll notice we're still very much leading with the greens. So moving into photography, we again, on the top there, you'll see we use words from the brand platform, engaging portraits, beautiful environmentals, active lifestyle shots. Those portraits and environmentals are really about making sure any prospective students or current students see themselves in communication pieces. So portraits that are candid, natural light, bright, warm, engaging, and then environmentals that showcase the beautiful campus so students can really picture themselves here at WPU. And then our third column there with the active lifestyle shots, we want to make sure we're using photography that proves how vibrant, active, and adaptive our learning environment is. So when we are showing students working together in a lab, we want to make sure those are bright and dynamic. People are moving, they're caught in a moment where that hands-on environment is really the focus. Photographic style we've added here to the brand is something we're calling over the shoulder. What this should be doing is it should be a visual representation of what it means for students to be living in today or living in the moment. So when we've taken a photo of somebody where they're centered in the middle, looking out to everything around them, that's kind of, they're taking in that active, hands-on academic environment. So we might want to also combine those over-the-shoulder shots with a portrait where you kind of get the full picture. You're both seeing the environment that our subject is in, but also you're getting to see the subject as well. These are some details around duotones. We have a darker duotone, which are the combinations on the top there, and we have a lighter duotone, which are the combinations on the right. Not only are these like just another example of vibrant, engaging photography styles, but we also use duotones when maybe we need to make sure type is legible on top of it. So by making a duotone, you make it a little bit easier to place type on top of a photograph. Or maybe you have a photograph that's just not the best quality to be able to show it in a full bleed way without it getting a little fuzzy or a little just messed up. And a duotone can really help compensate for poor lighting in those situations. Typography, we have two brand typefaces here, and we're using them in pretty similar ways, both the Stolzel, which is that sans serif on the left, and the Bennett Banner, which is the serif on the right. We're using them for headlines, subheadlines, and body copy. Stolzel is a bit better for longer form body copy. Bennett Banner is a bit better for shorter form body copy, like a pull quote, something where we can show it a little bit bigger. But we're using both of them for headlines, which I'll talk about in a few slides. But on the next slide, Stephen, we have these system alternatives for really specific situations, such as Microsoft Office applications or email signatures, where we can't use either the brand typefaces or we have provided Google font typefaces. We're going to use a system font, which is found on any machine as our fallback. And like I said, those are really specific situations where we want to be using those. For the most part, we're going to be using our brand fonts. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, we're combining both Stolzel and Bennett Banner in headlines. And the reason we're doing that is because Stolzel as a sans serif is a little bit more informal, a little bit more casual, and Bennett Banner is a little bit more traditional, a little bit more academic and formal. And so when we combine those in a headline, we're trying to represent sort of that dichotomy that William Peace exists in as both the progressive school and the traditional school. And so this is not only a distinct way to typeset, but we think it really represents who William Peace is. And then we have these two graphic treatments to type, which are underlining. We're only underlining Bennett Banner, that serif typeface, as a way to just draw a little bit more emphasis towards it, especially in headline usage. And then a type bar, which is just a block of color. Like I said, sometimes it's not legible enough to put type right over photographs, so we can use the type bar to provide enough contrast there and put type that sort of encroaches on pictures. This is a pretty detailed thing here. This is a hierarchy and just an example hierarchy, something to go off of. Not all of our communications need to follow this type hierarchy, but this is just an example here of how we might use an eyebrow, a headline. We have a sub headline here in Bennett Banner, and then our body copy in Stolzel, but that's just an example of how you might combine things. And that might change based on who the audience is. We might want to use a bit more Stolzel if we have a prospective student piece, and we might want to use more of the Bennett Banner if it's a more traditional piece. Getting into the graphic elements here in these next couple pages, you're going to see elements that we've made that are inspired by cartography and maps, and that's really supposed to represent the journey that students take from their today to their someday. And so we're using them in kind of subtle ways. We have our grid lines here on the top, and I'm having a little bit trouble seeing them here on the screen, but that's kind of the point. We want it to be subtle. And then we're also using those grid lines as sort of border elements as well, which you're seeing on the bottom there. We also have these patterns. These patterns are, again, inspired by maps, but also like sort of a 10,000 foot view. If you were to be looking on an airplane down onto the ground, what does like the fields and the roads and that sort of thing look like as you're looking down. So we're only using these patterns in those 3 lighter secondary colors that you saw earlier in this document. And we're using it in those colorways, whether they're on top of their own sort of color or whether they're on top of the darker versions of those colors on the bottom there. And then we have these symbols and these frames. Our frames accent our photography and sort of add a almost like a movement element to the piece. We can just sort of emphasize and add a little visual interest to photography. And the symbols, again, they're just visual interest that we'll use to accent our certain layouts and pieces. This is not necessarily new content, but we wanted to make sure we included some guidelines around specifically the athletic branding. We haven't changed or touched anything here. And so we've included just some of these example tactics that we made when we made this concept and as we edited and the brand came to life. So we've included those here just as sort of visual reference. These aren't real existing pieces, but merely inspiration for what we could make moving forward. So we have a view book and just like an interesting cover here where you're getting to see that over the shoulder photography in action. And then we have an example spread as well, just showing how, because this is a large piece of view book, there's definitely room to use those secondary colors here because they're still going to be really driven by the greens. But if you're 10 pages into the view book, these colors are going to really help break some of the monotony of a confined color palette. We have light pole banners and a couple of Instagram stories as well, just showing how we use those different types of photography that we talked about earlier. And then we've included a digital ad as well. So with the School of Professional Studies being the audience for this one, like we talked about earlier, with this being an older, more traditional audience, we're definitely just using the green here and really trying to emphasize William Peace in that Bennett banner as well.
Awesome. So like Katie said, those examples in particular just start to show how we can combine the visual and the verbal into example tactics. And a great example of that is the marketing and communications team has already started to execute against some of the look and the feel across some various tactics. If you go to the website in particular, you'll kind of be served with a pop-up every now and then that you can start to see some of the photography and the visual language as well as the verbal language, which is always really exciting to see. So we have about 20 minutes left, and so we're going to walk you through some training exercises. There are some moments where I'm going to ask you to participate. So if you're not afraid to speak up or put yourself out there, then we definitely appreciate that. Much easier when you're in person, a little harder online. So just bear with us. Yeah, so I will go ahead and we'll dive into the first one. The first is about the pitch. Right, that I said that this is what you should really lean into in a lot of your time. And we wanted to look at the pitch breakdown here because a lot of the times people say, all right, now we're just saying fancy things and it doesn't really relate to any of our brand strategy. Well, now we're going to show you that there are clear through lines from the pitch in kind of external facing language that we're recommending you use externally, and how that dials back to some of that more internally facing guidepost language of the brand pillars. So what we want to do is assign the highlighted phrases to their corresponding pillars. So you can see there's 3 different colors here. We have that brighter green, more of it probably is showing up a little different on everyone's computer, but more of an orangish salmon color. And then we also have kind of a more teal color. So the first highlighted pieces are around this idea of we believe learning should be hands-on, adaptive, and nimble, and our experiential approach. So this first exercise is a little bit of a softball, but we're going to do it anyways. So if you had to draw a line from that bright green highlighted part to either the excel pillar, the engage pillar, or the endure pillar, and folks can use the chat, or if they want to speak up, they can do that too. Which pillar do you think this would go to? Well, no answers, but it goes to Excel. What we do better, right? We can start to see how that's coming to life, and even using some things like hands-on and experiential approach, right? These are some of the words we're using to specifically describe that experience. This next piece about meeting students where they are, preparing them for careers. Faculty not only know their students' names, but are interested, but their interests and aspirations, dedicated to helping them achieve them, and then the tight-knit community of a small university. This is drawn to the endure pillar, which is really about, really bringing that to life. So then finally, we have nestled in the heart of Raleigh's downtown area. Our university's culture is as vibrant as the city that surrounds it, opportunity of a growing, flourishing city. So really just being able to see how these things are specifically, laddering back to those pillars, but then putting some externally facing language around them. All right. Now I will actually ask folks to help out here. There's 3 different sentences here. And so what we're hoping to do in this on-off brand exercise is for you to choose one of the 3 options that best reflects the updated brand visual and verbal language. This one in particular is obviously looking just at the verbal language. So it's not saying that there will be a best answer, I should say. Some of them might look really close, and honestly, when I tried this the first time, I thought it was a little difficult too. But that might just be me. So I'll read through them, and then I'll ask folks to guess which one is the most on brand. So option A is at William Peace University, we provide real world experience and a hands-on liberal arts curriculum that ensure that ensure our students graduate career ready. Option B, at William Peace University, we provide the real world experience and hands-on curriculum that ensure our students graduate career ready. And then finally, at William Peace University, our students benefit from expert faculty and best-in-class programs, ensuring they graduate industry ready. So, which of these is most on brand? All right. There we go. Seeing some consensus for B, and I would say everyone is pretty sharp on it. B is the most on-brand sentence. So when we look at it, we've used the correct reference, and we've only mentioned the real-world experience and hands-on curriculum that differentiate us from competitors. The first one, if the kind of the big no-no here is more around specifically calling out liberal arts. Yes, there will be a time and a place that, depending on the specific audience, that you might have to use liberal arts, especially as you think about, in more academic settings. If you're at a conference, right, and you're talking about liberal arts education versus a research university and different things like that, obviously that's more okay. But when we're thinking about it in this larger kind of brand perspective, that's something that we want to avoid referencing. And then finally, the last sentence in particular, it's not that it's necessarily wrong, but it's just using it's positioning things the way that we're not really leaning into at the highest brand level. So thinking about things like expert faculty and best in class programs, even if we do have those things, right? But it's more of thinking about how our students benefit from dedicated faculty and immersive hands-on programs and making sure they graduate career ready. So a little bit of nuance there, but everyone caught on to it. So that's great. This one's a little more difficult, right? Gradually getting a little harder. Option A, our WPU community is active, vibrant, and connected. And our campus is situated in the heart of one of the most dynamic cities in the country, giving our students the support of a small school alongside the opportunity of a growing, flourishing city. Option B, the learning experience at WPU is active and vibrant, and its location in a major city means that WPU students benefit from the resources and connections of a large school alongside the close-knit community of a small one. And then C, our WPU community is motivated and future-focused, and our campus is situated in the heart of one of the most exciting cities in the country, giving our students the one-on-one attention of a small school alongside the opportunity and access of a major one. So which one again is most on brand? Casey was quick on it with A. I see some more responses. Looks like we're split for the most part between A and B. I'm going to pick on Bobby just because I know Bobby and have met her a few times. But Bobby, why do you say A is most on brand?
I think A, the word that really stood out to me that wasn't in B was connected. And so that was kind of one of the reasons, and the word heart. And I just remember in a lot of conversations we had, that word heart and that word connected kept coming up.
Yeah. So you are correct that that sentence is the most on brand. In terms of B, which I know there was a lot of there are a number of folks chose B as well. This is also one that's probably a little trickier, and as you get a little more tuned into it, there are probably ways that this could work in terms of kind of tuning a few different things, but we're looking at things in the way that we might want to talk about our learning experience, particularly around immersive, experiential, hands-on, real world. And we also talk about the resources and connections of a large school, which isn't necessarily part of our offerings, right? But thinking about how we have the small school alongside of the opportunity of a growing, flourishing city. And no one chose C, which is good. That was the least on brand of all of them. But in terms of thinking about the ways in which we talk about things, there are just more words here that don't necessarily align with the words that we're using. So this is actually a really nice little resource here to this on-brand word bank and the ways in which we talk about our community, our curriculum, our faculty, and then our Raleigh location. We've kind of used a lot of these words that we've been using throughout all of the different materials that we've provided and the rest of the guidelines. But just thinking about, how active, fits more into our community, and diverse fits more into the way that we talk about our community. We have a diverse curriculum, but it fits better over here with community. So this is not any way to say that this is a hard, fast rule and they can only be used in the categories in which they're developed here, but it's just a nice way to go back and kind of pick and choose some different things that's going to be best for you.
Okay, we have two quick, just visual examples of the same sort of thing we did with the verbal. I think these are a little bit easier, but I'm also biased. So of these three options here of just an example business card, which one do you guys think is the most on brand?
One, two, or three, or A, B, C, or... Nice.
Okay, big consensus there, and everyone is right. That first one there is the most on-brand business card. We're using the brand greens in the correct way, emphasizing that darker green that has the WPU brand recognition. And we're also using that pattern correctly. So you might argue that that middle one, that's still a primary green, we're still using in the right way, but we've outlined earlier in the brand guidelines that we're only using those patterns in the lighter versions of their colors. So they're the patterns being used in that dark green, and that's why that's off brand. The third one, again, everything's being used here correctly, but especially things like stationery, which is a primary branded visual piece, we should be using the greens and leading with the greens. And here we just have three kind of like fly banners, maybe something you take to a conference or a career fair. Which of these three options do you think is the most on brand? Okay, and there's a little bit of a mix, but I feel like most of you are right in saying that the second one here is the most on brand. The reason why the first one isn't on brand is because we're actually only using that underline technique with the Bennett banner with that serif typeface. So while the graphic elements and the subject and the focus are very similar with that first and second one, we're really only using especially in a headline setting, we're only using the underline with the Bennett banner. And the third one is off-brand because the subject has sort of shifted. We've made that concentric circle symbol really big, and it's almost like the subject of this banner. We don't want to use that. We want to use our patterns and our symbols in a subtle way and make sure that they're never the focus of a piece.
Awesome. Well, I know that we're just about at the top of our time, and I wanted to take a few minutes at the end of this to open it up to any questions that folks might have about the brand guidelines or anything about the brand more generally. Just in terms of kind of a general update, this is the first of 4 brand trainings. The next 3 will be conducted over the next few weeks. We're doing specifically a training with individuals across the university who are known as kind of high frequency users, our writers and designers, where we'll spend about 2 hours and dive into specific exercises of actually writing to the brand and designing a piece. So that's going to be a little bit more of an intensive experience. And then we're also going to have a town hall style over the next in the next week or so, and then also a session with admissions and advancement, kind of our 2 highest use groups of the brand. We're also continuing our engagement with the university over a number of different projects, including some communications and marketing strategies, as well as a reskin of key pages on the website, and some other materials that'll be coming down the way too, which is really exciting for us to continue our partnership with the university, and really helping bring the brand to life and reach a number of the goals, specifically around enrollment as we think about coming into the new year and then eventually the 2021 enrollment cycle as well. So I'll pause, like I said, and if there are any questions or comments or anything.
This seems great. I just had a question about athletics. I know you said none of the colors change or anything, but do you see anything changing on the Go Pacers website as it relates back to the piece thing, like at all, or is it strictly on the main webpage?
We're only focusing on the main web page. Athletics is always a tricky situation with any institution, just because there's so much that goes into it from a uniform standpoint, and it's kind of usually a separate kind of conversation. And typically, what happens is athletics changes if there's more of an opportunity to do a university-wide look at colors and logos and things like that. Otherwise, this is a little bit separate from anything that would happen there. Typically, I should say.
Thank you.
Yep. Can you talk more, about the design and use of the PowerPoint slides? So I'll actually, Colleen or Monique, if either of you want to address that. That's not something that we're doing, but it is something that would probably, introducing a new brand is not something where just kind of all the light switch flips on and then everything looks and feels like the new brand, right? But that it really is a long-tailed approach to really think about how can we introduce the brand, whether it's light pole banners or stationery and PowerPoint templates and things like that. So I'm sure all of those things are being considered, but probably more in a phased approach to address the most high priority things first.
And so this is Monique, and I'll just jump in. And so Dawn, there is a new PowerPoint template on MyPacerNet. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me after this.
So good, it's already done, see? Any other questions?
Hey, Stephen, this is Charlie. This great stuff. It looks really good. I have a totally irrelevant question. Why do you guys use as filler, for the early slides, a quote from a Cicero poem about good and evil?
Oh gosh, I didn't even know that there was a quote from Cicero on there, Charlie. So I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one.
The Sit Lorem Amet thing is a poem about good and evil.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty standard. I have a website bookmark. It'll generate as many paragraphs of just Greek filler copy for me. It's very standard for designers to just, I never think to know what it means, which maybe I should.
It could be a lot worse, believe me.
Well, Charlie, I must say that I didn't know where it was going, but hey, I'm glad we were able to actually answer it. Awesome. Well, like I said, this is not the end of the conversation, and our partners in crime in marketing communications, and everyone who's been working alongside of us throughout the course of this project. Yeah, it's just been such an honor to work alongside of you, and I'm glad that we're continuing our partnership to really help you all address some of the core goals that you all have. So. Feel free to reach out with any other questions. And I know Monique and Colleen are great resources for that. But otherwise, I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. And as always, stay safe and stay healthy. And we'll talk soon.